All right, this week is what they call a get-right game. A get-right game. There are no easy wins in the NFL, right? The Bengals already learned that lesson in week 1. The Ravens just learned that lesson in week 2. Someone else is going to learn that lesson in week 3. There will be upsets. It's why we watch every week. But for the Bengals, this is a get-right game. You can't get right more than the opportunity that they have on Monday night. It doesn't get any easier than this, right? Don't get me wrong. There are no easy wins in the NFL. We know that, but they're playing a team that is bad, a franchise that is always bad. They just picked number 2 in the draft for a reason. They have this really fun quarterback right now for a reason. And also, the Bengals are desperate for a win. You take a good team that has to win and a bad team that does what bad teams does when they run into good teams, what bad teams do. And these are the types of games we're going to have. You are in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Welcome in. Bengals with their backs against the wall on a Monday night at home, prime time. Look, we know what it is here, right? In the history of the NFL, only 6 teams, only 6, have ever started the year 0-3 and went on to make the playoffs. That, according to CBS Sports. Thanks to them for doing the looking. None of those teams of the 6 who ever made the playoffs after starting 0-3 have gone on to win the Super Bowl. So this is, I don't ever like calling anything a must-win, but it is a get-right game. It's week 3. No one has a must-win game in week 3. If you have a must-win game in week 3, something has gone terribly wrong elsewhere with your franchise. This is a game the Bengals have to have. Washington started 2-0 last year. Since then, they have not won back-to-back games. It has been more than a full calendar year since the Commanders have won back-to-back games. I know it's a new regime. You like Dan Quinn. I like Dan Quinn. You like Jaden Daniels. I like Jaden Daniels. We like the people who are on this team. They're fun to watch. And hey, when they play the rest of the AFC North, we'll all be big Commanders fans. But right now, Washington's not a very good football team. Traditionally, they're not a very good football team. This is one the Bengals need. By the way, that 2-0 start last year came against Arizona and Denver. And they've brought in defensive pieces, don't get me wrong, but Washington is still a team that the Bengals, with their backs against the wall, coming off a game where they should be pretty irritated, should come out and dominate on Monday night. You cannot lose this game. That's essentially what I'm saying. You're in prime time. They can't even water the field right. Did you see that in Washington last week? They had patches all over the field because they claim the sprinkler system doesn't work. How does that happen? You're an NFL team. You just sold for over $1 billion. I don't even know what the number was, but it was 8-9 figures. Water the field correctly. This is a franchise that repeatedly screws up. Now, at times, sure, they figure out ways to do certain things. They had a fun year with RG3, and they made the playoffs a few years ago with Taylor Heineke and really took that Tom Brady Bucs team that won the Super Bowl down to the wire in the AFC wild card. But they're still the Washington Commanders. They're still a team that Cincinnati Bengals should defeat. And if you can't tell, my expectations for this week could not be any higher. Thanks for tuning in. Recording this on a Thursday afternoon, as I feel like at this point we know just about all we're going to know. Zach Taylor meeting with the media a little bit ago. We've got T. Higgins practicing today. We've got B.J. Hill and Sheldon Rankins not practicing today. We've got Chris Jenkins, the second-round defensive tackle out of Michigan, practicing today. And between Rankins and B.J. Hill, I want to go check with my pals down in Cincinnati. One of them was on the rehab field. One was not practicing at all. We'll go to Jay Morrison here, who you know I cite on here quite a bit. B.J. Hill on the rehab field. He says he does not see Sheldon Rankins. So we'll get to some of that later. The Bengals go out and make a signing this week to kind of get some bodies in at that defensive line because they need it right now. And look, I talked about this in the preseason, and everyone knows it's not, I don't have some, philosophical, intellectual ability to tell you these things. You can't just get battered in the trenches and continue to win football games. It'll work against Washington. It'll work against Carolina. But down the stretch here, we saw how much time Mahomes had on that 4th and 16 the other day. It helps that they were allowed to hold for Kansas City, sure. But the Bengals also had Zach Carter and Jay Tuafile, and they're guys we all like, but guys who are, backups. So try to get right on the defensive line. We'll get into that in a little bit. Here's what I thought to myself last night when I was trying to come together with what I wanted to say on this podcast today. And thank you so much for tuning in. The numbers continue to grow every week, and I love to see that. Keeps me inspired to do it. So I thought to myself, I'm having this. You just heard me say how high I am on the Bengals this week. I think there's no reason that the Bengals don't come out and dominate. But I had to kind of take off those black and orange glasses and say, if there is a reason to worry, what should it be? And last week with the Bengals playing at 425, I caught a lot of that Washington and New York game. And if you did the same, it was on Red Zone quite a bit. It was a good game down to the wire. If you watched that game, you couldn't help but notice Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback out of LSU. A lot of LSU action on the field on Monday night. The reigning Heisman Trophy winner. You could not help but notice. He reminds you when he runs the ball, and he runs it very well, he reminds you of Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's as good as Lamar running the football, but as far as shifty goes, I think he's probably right there, right behind Lamar, and there's some other guys we'll talk about here. I mean, if you're looking at, he's not as good as Lamar. And I looked at this. I would say my top 5 running backs, Lamar's 1 right now. Number 2 is either going to be Josh Allen or Justin Fields. So we've got 2 now in the AFC North. And then put those 2 in the 2-3 spot, Fields and Allen. And then probably 4 or 5 is Jalen Hurts, and throw 4 or 5. You can put Jaden Daniels now in that other spot. He's a top 5 running quarterback. He's been very efficient with the football. So if he comes out and makes some statement game, this is the only thing I could think of. This is the only way I think Washington can hang around and have a shot to win this game on Monday night. The only thing I can think of is he comes out and says, America, you're going to know my name, Monday Night Football, let's get going, let's rock and roll. And that's the only way I think this thing's close. He would have to have the game of a lifetime to keep it close on Monday night in Cincinnati. And look, I'm by no means saying Jaden Daniels is as good as Lamar Jackson, the 2-time MVP, the reigning MVP, but he shows a lot of that ability with the legs that we've seen Lamar show. And I'm not just talking a good running quarterback, right? Josh Allen's a good running quarterback. Jalen Hurts is a good running quarterback. You don't worry about them dominating you with their legs. Lamar, you do. Lamar's in a different stratosphere. At the top all-time guys, it's Lamar and Michael Vick. Those 2 guys can absolutely just move as in a form humans should not be able to do. Those 2 guys have always been in a different stratosphere. So the good news I thought about that is this is a Bengals defense. Lou Anarumo and all the guys who have been around, they know how to attack running quarterbacks. There are certain divisions where, I just named those 5 guys who are awesome. If you're not in one of those divisions, if you're not playing these guys on a regular basis, you don't know as well how to attack a guy who can run like that and also throw like an NFL quarterback. And speaking of throwing like an NFL quarterback, Jaden Daniels, he's throwing he's not going out there and lighting it up like Aaron Rodgers used to, but he's also not making rookie mistakes. No mistakes yet. No interceptions, no touchdown passes. 2 games for a rookie, and I know he hasn't, he's played Tampa Bay and the Giants, but that's still really solid. He's completing 75% of his passes through 2 games, and it's not like they're only throwing it 20 times. I think he's thrown 70 passes on the year, completing 75%. He's not lighting it up, but he's doing what you want a rookie to do in his situation. I think he's looked about as good as you could hope a rookie quarterback on a franchise to look so far. So that's the thing where I said to myself, if there's one thing, because Washington's not going to come in here and, beat the Bengals up. But can they keep it close and make a play at the end? Sure, it's the NFL. Absolutely that can happen. It should not, especially if the Bengals were 2-0, then maybe you say, kick your feet up a little, feel good about yourself off a Kansas City win, which they obviously didn't get. But had they won in week 1, then maybe you say, look out, this is a young team with some fire. That's not the case this week. The case this week is that the Bengals are desperate for a win. They're facing a rookie quarterback with a franchise typically not very good, and they should know how to handle business. Jaden Daniels looks awesome. Going to be rooting for him. He's one of those guys you say, if this is a guy, it's like Lamar, Wouldn't Lamar be fun if he played for, Seattle? Somewhere where you would not see him every week, and you could be like, hey, this guy's fun to watch, and he's not the one threat in the division to take it away from the Cincinnati Bengals. That would be nice. We could have that with Jaden Daniels. He's got Terry McLaurin, probably better than any receiver Lamar's ever had. He's a guy who at some point this year, I think he will if he can stay healthy, because he takes some shots too. At some point this year, I think Jaden Daniels is going to have one of those holy smokes games. You just hope it's not at Paycor Stadium on Monday night. And even if it is, the Bengals, with the position they're in and with the talent they have, you got to find a way to overcome it. He's still a rookie. He might be a phenomenal-looking rookie through 2 games. He might be the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, and him and Joe are going to do a beautiful jersey swap at the end, and I'll retweet it when LSU sends it out there. But he's still a rookie quarterback. The only thing I can think of where the Bengals wouldn't have a multi-score lead at the 2-minute warning on Monday night is if he has one of those monster games. Washington's defense, they've got some names you'll recognize, but they're not. I mean, they let the Giants score 3 touchdowns last week, and the Giants stink. I can't believe how bad the Giants stink after Brian Daboll's first year. Doesn't make any sense. Not going to talk about them, obviously, but the Washington defense so far gave up, 37 points to Tampa Bay. Again, Tampa solid. Baker Mayfield looking really solid. But it's not Patrick Mahomes dropping 37 on you. It's not Josh Allen dropping 37 on you. It's Baker Mayfield. Fringe top 10 QB. Rooting for Baker. Like Baker. A lot of fun when he's not in Cleveland, huh? Washington last week made 7 field goals. I heard Zach Taylor say today, he kind of, and he's doing what a coach does. Something just fell down upstairs. Hopefully no one's breaking in to murder me. He does what a coach does. I'm home alone, so that's, He does what a coach does. He compliments them. He says, they got down in the field goal range. They made little penalties here and there that kept them from scoring touchdowns. They're a threat. All that. All the smart things a coach says on a Thursday press conference, Zach Taylor said. And they did. To credit to them, man. 7 field goals. That means you're in scoring position 7 times. The Bengals, however, have no excuse to let them get in field goal range that many times. And, the Chiefs last week needed a defensive touchdown to break 20 points. The Kansas City Chiefs, with Patrick Mahomes and Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, all those fast guys, they needed the defense to get a scoop and score to break 20. So that's how good this defense can be, right? Defense brought their A game last week. Lou Anarumo, you know something about Patrick Mahomes and company no one else can figure out. We'll worry about that later. But right now, there's another potential star in the making. Let's not put him on that pedestal. But there's another guy who has a unique skill set in Washington, and I'll be interested to see what Lou can cook up against him. So there we are on that. It's the only situation I can see where Washington comes into Cincinnati and gets a win. Would be Jaden Daniels has some breakout monster game, and I think he'll have one this year. Hopefully it's, whenever they play Baltimore and Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Hopefully all 3 of those games is when that happens. The Bengals, they'll have a get-right game. Jamar Chase will have a get-right game. Listen to this. Last week, Malik Neighbors, another LSU guy, again, Tigers everywhere. Malik Neighbors, 10 catches, 127 yards, and a touchdown, and his second career game against the Washington Commanders. Malik, of course, now plays for the New York Giants. He looks awesome. Another stud from LSU catching the ball in week 1 against Tampa. Again, Washington got blown out 37-20. The Bucs had 3 different receivers. Baker Mayfield had 3 different receivers catch 5 or more passes for 60 or more yards each. You got to feel good. You got to feel good about Jamar finally breaking out, getting that rust knocked off of him, and coming out there and putting up numbers. He's got 10 catches for 97 yards on the year. I bet he doubles his yardage this week. I bet he'll have a 100-yard gain this week. 100-yard game, not gain. That would be cool if he did have a 100-yard gain. And, I think he'll double it. And, by the way, and I mentioned this at the top of the show, he gets the Pippen to his Jordan back, right? T. Higgins out there practicing today. Our pal Jeremy Rao posting the video. T catching balls. Zach Taylor said he'll be out there. That's good. If you get T. Higgins back, man, it's a whole nother dynamic. Look, we all love the young receivers on this team, but T. Higgins is a different guy. T. Higgins is a borderline. When he's healthy, I think he is a top 10 receiver. If he was playing 17 games a year and, not missing so many snaps with these soft tissue injuries, I think you look at him and say that's a top 10 receiver. At any rate, when he's on the field, he's excellent. I don't have to tell anyone listening. I don't have to tell NFL fans that, let alone Bengals fans, which I assume most of you are. So come on home, T. Let's light it up. There's just too many weapons on the field once he's there. And you still have Yoshi. You still have Mike Gesicki. Those two guys. And remember, those are guys who are still molding and kind of figuring out their roles in this offense. Gesicki, his first year here. Yoshi, again, a 6th-round pick last year, seeing some serious snaps last week. By the way, he scored 2 touchdowns in Kansas City. So in addition to the guy who caught 2 touchdowns in Kansas City, you're going to have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins out there. So we feel good there. We have to feel good there. Again, Malik Neighbors, 10 catches, 127 and a touchdown last week in his second NFL game. And I told you, Bucs receivers in week 1, 3 different receivers with 5 receptions or more and 60 yards or more. So it's a get-right game. Again, not to dish on Washington. I told you, I like their coach. I like their owner now better than their last one, and Jaden Daniels looks like a lot of fun. We all like Austin Eckler. We all like Terry McLaurin. I went to Ohio State. These guys are fun, but this is a game the Bengals should go out and dominate. They also have just 2 sacks on the year. We know what that's tied for last in the NFL. They've got 2 sacks on the year, and keep Joe upright, and we all know what happens, right? Keep that straw that stirs the drink on his feet, and great things will happen. I'm telling you, I tried to come up with reasons why Washington could win this game, and maybe someone smarter than me will have some. I couldn't find many. I could find a lot that say the Bengals should do well, do very well. Again, it's an NFL game. We see it every week. The Bengals shouldn't have lost in week 1. Baltimore had no reason losing to the Raiders last week. Crazier things have happened, but the Bengals in their position. Again, I feel good about this as much as anything because the Bengals are 0-2, because the Bengals have to win. I'd feel good about them playing anyone this week, let alone a franchise with a rookie quarterback and a head coach that we all like, but, he's getting things in place. It's his first year there. So, 2 sacks on the year. It'd be nice to keep it at that number. Carolina, by the way, next week's opponent is tied with them for last in the league with 2 sacks as well. And we all, we're not even going to talk about Washington. Never mind. So I mentioned the defensive line. I was going to get down. You remember this is a team, Joe's rookie year, right? So I didn't want to leave you hanging, but I also don't want to bring it up. Let's move on. A little bit of news this week as the Bengals signed Lawrence Guy, the defensive tackle, in his 14th year. He's an old fella. He was in that same draft class as Andy Dalton and A.J. Green. I say that. He's 1 year younger than me, so that's nice. But he was on the Patriots All-Decade team. He was a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. He's going to show up. He's going to bust his butt. He's played for New England. I mean, if you're able to be on a New England Patriots All-Decades team in 2010, you do things right. I've mocked the Patriot way as much as anything, but it's a real thing. To be in that system, you had to show up and do things right. He's also played for Baltimore. So Lawrence Guy comes in. He's 34 years old as a defensive tackle. He's not going to go out there and be DJ Reader. He's not going to go out there and be Aaron Donald. He's not going to go out there and be Sheldon Rankins. But he's a guy who can come in. He can show, especially, you got 2 rookies in McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins who haven't played yet. I mean, right there's a great guy just to have around them, right? So Chris Jenkins, I don't know if I mentioned this at the top of the show. Zach Taylor said he would practice today. He's got a big club on his hand. So the Bengals just need something there. BJ Hill, as I said, Jay Morrison reporting he is on the rehab field. So if they can get either Rankins, it appears, is not on the field today. But if they can get one of either Rankins or Hill, and by the way, it's good news. It seems like it's a hamstring for them, for both of them. Should have looked that up before I came on the old podcast, huh? Let's look it up right now. Hang in there with me. And they're both day-to-day. So, yeah, Olivia Ray of WLWT, my old stomping ground, says it's hamstring injuries for both. And we know how those go, man. Sometimes it's a week. Sometimes it's 5. You just hope they get it and hopefully it's closer to a week for both BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins. If you've ever hurt your hamstring, sometimes it hurts for a day and a half, and sometimes it bothers you for a year because you're old and can't really do much and you're weak to begin with. However, these guys are not that. They're NFL players. They'll have the best possible rehab and doctors and athletic trainers and all that, getting them back in shape. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. That's definitely a big question mark. And again, like I said, fortunately, you're facing a Washington team that, again, I'm not trying to rip on them, but doesn't scare you too much when it comes to their offense. So, yeah, that's where we're at. That defensive line has got to get healthy quick. And we all know, preseason Myles Murphy should be back in October. Cam Sample, he was done for the year. I mean, some of these, it's just the same player position group just getting nailed. I mean, it's kind of insane. It's like, and we've seen this with the offensive line for the Bengals, right? I mean, what is going on where the big guys cannot stay healthy? I mean, it's been a few years since they dealt with that, but man, can't we have, with all due respect, I don't know, just not, there's no position group where everyone getting banged up is going to go well. But this is a rough one, not an area you want to be thin at. The other good news, put a positive spin on things here, is you got Lou Anarumo. Lou Anarumo he's been at this for a while. He can find ways to get creative. He can find ways to put guys in position to succeed. We saw Sam Hubbard come in and to play defensive tackle last week. If you want to do that and have Joseph Osai play more on the outside, maybe we see some of that. There are options. It's just you don't want in week 3 to be missing the 2 anchors of your defensive line. So, see if they get back on track there. Let's go out of the jungle. Creative segment I came up with about the other teams in the AFC North. Steelers. I wrote on my little sheet here that the Steelers were going to get their first loss this weekend as they go to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. However, Justin Herbert did not practice today. So the Chargers quarterback, isn't that something? Isn't that something that the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they were to catch a break, wouldn't that be a shock? That poor team never gets anything to go right for them, do they? So we'll see what happens there. But at any rate, Pittsburgh going 3-0 would be kind of ridiculous. Now, if Herbert doesn't play, that's a very soft schedule, having played Atlanta in week 1, and then, was it Carolina last week, right? So, yeah, or no, it was Denver last week, excuse me. So we'll see what happens there. Chargers 2-0, Steelers 2-0. That game is in Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, I said it was in Los Angeles. So, gosh, the Steelers go 3-0. Now, I've said the back half of their schedule is brutal. We won't worry about that too much right now. So they get the Chargers, Colts, Cowboys. They go to the Raiders. Yeah, so we'll see. But that could be another break for Pittsburgh if Justin Herbert doesn't play. And, you talk about a team that just manages to catch breaks over and over again. They reside in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Elsewhere outside of the jungle, let's see. The Cleveland Browns, they are back in Cleveland this week, taking on the aforementioned New York Giants. Giants are another team. Look, they do have backs. They're back against the wall as well. I think Cleveland wins this game, but if you're looking to place a bet, the Giants at plus 6.5, Cleveland feels really good about themselves after last week. Going to Jacksonville, a decent team, get a win. Deshaun Watson miraculously plays pretty well. This feels like one of those games where Cleveland has to line up with 17 seconds left to kick a 43-yard field goal to make it 2017. Again, Cleveland finds ways to mess things up. The Giants are desperate. I know they're bad. I don't think they're awful. They've got dudes. It doesn't really make sense to me. They scored 3 touchdowns last week and lost. I don't know. I think the Browns probably win that game, but I do, if you're looking to bet, the Giants plus 6.5 will be on my bet sheet. And then the game I am most interested in on Sunday, the Ravens go to Dallas. Now, like the Bengals, Baltimore sitting at 0-2. However, unlike the Bengals, Baltimore playing a team that's pretty solid that should also be a little bit ticked off after they got embarrassed at home last week. We know they're a solid team. We know, I've said it on this show before, Dallas is the only Kansas City has more regular season wins the last 3 years than Dallas. They stink in the playoffs, but in the regular season, they typically play pretty well. If Baltimore falls to 0-3, boy, is that fun. We'll see what happens. And I mentioned the 0-3 stat. The Bengals and Ravens are both 0-2. Since 2020, when the NFL went to a 14-team playoff, 32 teams have started 0-2. Just 2 of those teams, including the 2022 Cincinnati Bengals, went on to make the playoffs. So since 2020, so what's that? 20, 21, 22, 23, the last 4 years, 32 teams have started 0-2, not including this year. 2 of them have made the playoffs. The other one was the Texans just last year, who, of course, had a rookie quarterback, rookie head coach, started 0-2, and now they're the darlings of the league, and that's great. Those numbers coming from Yahoo Sports. Be sure to credit the outlets you take your information from when you do it. But, yeah, so the Bengals and Ravens both at 0-2. I mean, they're already backs against the wall. The New York Times does a little playoff chance predictor thing. I know before the season they had the Bengals, I think, at 74% to make the playoffs. Now it's at 44%, which is much better than most 0-2 teams would be. The Ravens were kind of in the same ballpark there. But the Ravens have that first place schedule, remember. So Baltimore's got, you look at Baltimore's next 3. They've got Dallas, Buffalo, Cincinnati. And they're sitting at 0-2. It's just brutal. At Dallas versus the Bills, at Cincinnati, and then they get the Commanders after that, which is when Jaden Daniels should have that breakout amazing game, right? We'll all root for that. So, tough sledding right now for the Baltimore Ravens, but they find ways to figure things out. So, that's that. My betting segment, look, I have to apologize. I'm 0-3. I gave you 3 bets this year. They've all been wrong. The first 2, I can't complain about too much because it was Bengals offensive bets, and the Bengals offense didn't do anything in week 1. Last week, I said the under at 48.5. Of course, there ends up being 51 points. Didn't have a defensive touchdown on the cards, I guess. I don't know. But I'm going to keep chipping away at it. I'm actually doing well. I don't bet a ton. I don't bet on the Bengals typically. I never bet the lines or the over-under. If I see a player prop I like, which is what I'm doing on this podcast, then I'll bet on it. But I don't ever, I'm a little superstitious. Not superstitious, but a little stitious. And I don't bet on the Bengals for that reason. If I were to bet on the Bengals, I would take them at -7.5 this week. And I'll tell you more on that in just a minute, of course, when I give you my prediction. Here's the player prop I like this week, and it has to do with what I told you earlier. On ESPN Bet, they've got the over-under on Jamar Chase's longest reception of the night at 24.5 yards. I'll hammer the over on that one. Here's why. A, I just told you, what Malik Neighbors did, what the Bucs receivers did, and B, you're going to get T. Higgins back. At some point, they're going to have to go one-on-one against Jamar. He's been frustrated. Joe loves him. The coaches love him. They want to keep him happy. They are going to give him some deep shots in primetime. They are going to put him in a position to ball out on national TV and, get a little bit of that dirt off his shoulders that he's had to deal with the last month or so. He's dealt with a lot. People forget he's 24 years old. Do you know what an idiot I was at 24 years old? I'm an idiot now. Do you know how poorly most of us would handle the stress and the pressure and the spotlight of trying to make $40 million a year when we're 24 years old? He's done excellent with it. Absolutely excellent. And I think the Bengals are going to reward him for, what an awesome teammate he's been. Give him some deep shots, man. Get it up there. Air it out. Let him go get it. And give me the over. So Jamar Chase, longest reception on ESPN Bet is over under 24.5 yards. I will hit the over on that one. I will bet the over. Hopefully I'll hit the over on that one. And my prediction for the week. So last week, if not for that Chiefs defensive touchdown, I nearly nailed the score, right? I think I had it 23-20 Bengals. It ends up being 26-25 Kansas City. Take that touchdown, and it's 25-20. It's close. It's close. Give myself some sort of pat on the back after my bets have been awful. So this week, I'm going to go big. I don't typically do this. I don't like doing this. You do it on a podcast, and people hear it, and if you're off, you look like an idiot. But I'm going to take the Bengals 31-13. I don't think, I just think it's one of those games. They know they have to have it. Washington, they come out, they get out front early. Hopefully it's one of those games, and we see this. You see it on Monday Night Football and Sunday Night Football a lot because we watch these games. You don't necessarily expect to see it with your team because of the nerves we have when we're rooting for our teams in spots where they have to win. But how often are, you're sitting there at your phone and everyone's going to bed, and Joe Buck and Troy Aikman are, talking about the concession stands with 7 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. I like this to be one of those type games. I like this to be a game where the Bengals know that Jaden Daniels monster game I mentioned, it cannot happen. They will not let it happen, and they'll come out, set the tone early, and coast this one home. Bengals 31-13. That is what I like to happen on Monday night in Cincinnati, Ohio at Paycor Stadium. Bengals need it, man. Got to get back. I mean, they've got great opportunities here as Joe Burrow's press conference started, probably should have waited until that was over to do this, but I've got other things to do. My entire shower is leaking in my kitchen. I got to take care of that as well. And, listening to Joe right now, he says all the things you would expect him to say. They're not worried, nor should they be. They've been here before. So, yeah, they're fine. Win games. I mean, they've got Baltimore. If you're Baltimore right now, if you're a fan, I guess they're never going to say they're worried, but you're probably worried, right? You kind of have to reel off 2 of these next 3, and they're not easy ones. Bengals reel off 2 of the next 3, and they're sitting okay. Ideally, they win all of them, but we'll see. That's where it's at. I like the Bengals 31-13 on Monday night. Of course, the Ring of Honor ceremony. Tim Krumrie, one of the baddest dudes to ever wear stripes. Corey Dillon, one of the other baddest dudes to ever wear stripes. I mean, just a bowling ball. Corey Dillon was probably the second Bengals player. Probably more than that. Because I had Jeff Blake, Carl Pickens. Those guys were, kind of when I was a little kid, and then Corey Dillon comes along and it's a whole new thing because they went from that, the Shakin' Blake and Carl Pickens lobbing it up there to this bruiser in Corey Dillon. I'm not old enough to remember Tim Krumrie. Every Bengals fan I know over the age of 40, maybe 45, will tell you for a fact that if Tim Krumrie does not break his leg in Super Bowl 23, the Bengals win that game. I mean, you can ask the old heads about that. They all claim it's true, and I choose to believe them. That's how it goes, though, man. We all see Super Bowl injuries, and life sucks sometimes, huh? But it's great. Tim Krumrie's all-time guy, and that's why he's going in the Ring of Honor, as well as Corey Dillon, who just in my lifetime, he's a Hall of Famer. Let me say that as well. Maybe I'll do a whole off-season series on Corey Dillon one day if he's not in Canton. Just absurd. He is one of the 150 whatever finalists for 2025, but he's probably not going to get in. You look at I don't have time. I got other things I got to do, and we're a little over the half-hour point at this point anyway. So I'm going to get out of here. Bengals win at 31-13 in my humble opinion. This podcast is called In the Jungle, and if you like it, please give it a subscribe, give it a rating, especially on YouTube. Those are kind of the more fun ones to deal with, and yeah, tell a friend. Keep listening. Give it a rating. Do what you want to do. If you want to chime in, you can comment on YouTube, or you can tweet at me on Twitter or /X at Matt Edwards, or you can text me, which is what some of you do as well. So appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you Monday night or Tuesday morning. You want to go to bed and get things done. I'll probably record something late Monday or early Tuesday. We'll figure it out. It'll be there. You subscribe, and it comes right to your phone. You don't even have to wonder when it's coming out. It's just you get an alert on your phone. Hey, more to listen to. So appreciate everyone tuning in. It's been a lot of fun. We're going to keep it rolling. I'm Matt Edwards. It's In the Jungle. We will see you after Monday Night in the Jungle.